Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on. Well, this is Watch You Want, and it's Wednesday. It's the Wild Card, our variety show. I need a great co-pilot, so I'm joined here by Brian Govberg.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
Lead sales at Govberg Jewelers, and tonight we've got a great program. A little bit of this or that, a couple of watches that are on the rise as investments, and some brands that we think have some real upside going forward. But first, I do want to remind you, if you want the quick hits in the short format 5 to 7 minute watch review videos that I've traditionally done, the hardware store 724 is Watch You Want Watch Reviews. It's my other YouTube channel. Subscribe and get new reviews daily. And Brian, we also have the Watchbox app. The Govberg Watchbox app, where you can actually see my videos from that channel.
Yes, that was recently done.
Yeah, talk a little bit about how the two are bound together so you get the stream automatically.
So the video is bound into the news, so you'll be able to go in and during your normal feed of selecting sources of media that you want to receive, the media or our videos are going to be embedded right into that. So you'll be able to watch the videos and peruse any and all watch news as well.
Plus, you may not have known, but I also write articles, and you get them from our Govberg blog every month. So definitely check out our Govberg Watchbox app, where you can get anything from real-time appraisals of one watch or your entire collection, to my videos, my writing, and a curated stream of the best blogs, magazines, and news sites. Govberg Watchbox app on govbergwatches.com. All right, this or that. Let's play a battle of the borderline sports watches. Brian,
do you want to go first? Should I go first?
You're going to go first. Let me just introduce for our audience the thinking behind this one. They're both swimmable, but barely. They're both steel, but not beaters. They're both automatic and free-sprung, but high horology movements, not like ETA Rolex-type bashers. And they're both loomed, but barely. IWC Portuguese Yacht-Club Chronograph or JLC Geophysic Universal Time?
So for this one, I'm probably going to go with not probably, I am. I am going with the IWC Yacht-Club Chronograph, particularly the newest variation of the watch that has a reduced size of 43 millimeter.
Yes.
I felt that the older size was a little bit too big and not that wearable. My reasoning being is that for me, the Geophysic really isn't a sport watch.
Okay.
And a world time watch, I just gravitate more towards dress. And I definitely think I would wear the IWC a whole lot more. And then the other thing, and maybe it's just a pet peeve of mine, is I don't like a map of the world on my dial.
Fair enough. And a map of the world that's held together by visible screws, no less.
Yeah, so I mean, and it's like the full map. So it's like,
yeah.
if it's a Patek 5131 enamel and it's like beautifully done, I get it. But this is like in your face.
Yeah. Speaking of in your face, guys, I've actually got the Geophysic Universal Time Tourbillon downstairs for a review video I'm doing that's going to be on the Govberg channel. So check that one out too if you like new watches. Now I'm going to say, specifically because of the size, I'm going with the JLC. I know you guys thought, oh, Tim, JLC, obviously. But there's a logic here, guys. It's a 41.6 millimeter steel case. It's 2.5 millimeters thinner than the IWC. And for me, the IWC, because of the shape of the lugs, wears bigger than it is. No, it's not a 45.5 anymore. Like you said, they did size it down for 2015. It's more wearable, but for me, that doesn't mean it's wearable. I'm going with the beauty of the JLC dial. It's lacquered, it's guilloche. Is it excessive? Yes. Does it feel a little bit like Vacheron Jr.? Sure. But I still think that this was a good effort, and it makes it all up on the back end with the JLC Caliber 772. The Gyro Lab balance is stunning. That's something that came from the Extreme Lab series. I love to see it in a production watch.
I think as far as the two watches go, that the JLC is going to gravitate more towards dress, and then the Yacht Club is going to gravitate more towards sport, even though they still fall in that in-between middle spectrum.
Yeah, like I said, these are both...
Because you wouldn't wear the JLC to the beach.
Exactly.
Maybe you
exactly.
would.
I mean, here's the thing. I probably wouldn't have thrown the JLC into this comparo and this or that if it hadn't been for the fact that this year, for $15,700, you can now get a version of this watch on a full stainless steel bracelet, which moves it into borderline sports watch territory for me. But therein lies the crux of the issue. $12,100 for the IWC versus $14,000 for the JLC on a strap and $15,700 on the bracelet.
Good question for you. Is the Geophysic World Time still deadbeat?
Yes, it is. The world time, the universal time, is still a true second, to use JLC's nomenclature. I like the fact that it retains that functionality while adding the world time. This is a watch that did not sell me until I saw it in person, and I could say the same thing of the Tourbillon. That was a watch that had me scratching my head like, one of these things does not belong. Both of the things were nicely integrated, the True Second and the World Time, and in the case of the Tourbillon, the World Time and the Tourbillon, even though if you're from New Zealand, I got some really bad news. The Tourbillon ate your country. So I think we can disagree in good faith right here. Okay, guys, I have a little featurette that Brian and I discussed off camera, and the concept was watches that should be purchased in precious metal when you have the option. Obviously, it's always more expensive. We know. For the amount of gold you're getting, it's not worth sometimes doubling the price. But here are the watches. Bear with me, Brian. I know you think I'm a little bit nuts with these. These are the watches that you should buy in precious metal when given the option. AP Royal Oak Offshore, the 26470 PT, a full precious metal bracelet Royal Oak Offshore. It's a beast. 50 pieces, 500 plus grams. For Americans, that's well over a pound. $126,000, because if you're gonna go offshore, go overboard. And to answer the question I know everyone is mouthing this time of year as we enter the fall blockbuster season, but what would Emperor Palpatine wear? Now you know. Okay. The Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Calendar Meteorite, yes, it costs twice as much as the steel one. But because the rose iron contrast is worth that much, I would say this is where you have to indulge. Every luxury watch is an extravagance. This one's just a more attractive extravagance. The Hublot Big Bang, Brian, the original, all smile, all style. Let's not talk about the movement.
Carbon fiber dial.
Yep, this is the one you want because it's A, an Hublot, and B, the steel ceramic carbon fiber dial does not go too far enough. This is the spirit of Hublot. A big, giant rose gold case, devil may care styling, and yeah, it's got a humble ETA inside, but that just makes it reliable. And finally, the Rolex GMT Master 2 BLRO, the white gold Pepsi. $38,500, so what, guys? You know that if you could, you would. This is the one you want, even if it's not the one you would buy.
I think that's the only one that I agree with you on the entire list.
Okay, fair enough, but vive la différence, as they say. I'm happy to disagree with Brian. But Brian's actually got some great...
But the Smurf is awesome.
The Smurf's a monster.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's my favorite conversation with people is when they want it and they're trying to justify it to themselves in their mind on why they should get it. And like they come back, they go back and forth, and then, you know, finally it's just like, you know, they have the F it moment where they just pull the trigger on the watch.
Yeah. By the way, Smurf, white gold Submariner, beautiful lacquered dial that matches the ceramic bezel. Brian's a fan, I'm a fan. Really, the only argument against it is that the stainless steel Submariner is like a holy relic.
Exactly. So.
Okay, so now I have some favorite precious metal only watches, but I want you to discuss a feature that, again, we were kind of kicking around off camera, but brands with the most potential to gain standing and momentum and starting from a dead stop, I think.
Yeah, so I think that the conversation that we were having was, you know, what brands aren't necessarily at their bottommost point right now, but that they're in a position to really capture more market share and come out with some great watches in the next couple of years.
Because Patek is strong, Journe is strong, but they're going from strength to strength.
Rolex is strong.
Yeah, we're talking about the upslope here.
Exactly. So I think the first one, and we were pretty much in agreement on all three, I would say, that, you know, the first one that we spoke about was Breitling. So, you know, as we all know, Breitling just got a brand new worldwide CEO, Georges Kern, from the Richemont Group, who's going to come in and, hopefully reposition the brand, and take it in a more positive direction. So, Breitling's been around in the U.S. for a long time. It's actually, I think, the second most popular market for it's Japan,
which is counterintuitive because a lot of times people think the Japanese market must be conservative and Breitling watches are huge, but it's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've got, quite a wide array of pilots watches. The price points are great. They've already developed the in-house movement, so they've worked a lot of the kinks out. And I just think that they're really well positioned to come out with it. Just takes one really good watch
Yeah.
can jumpstart a brand, and I think that they're really in a great position to do that. And they've got a lot of different lines that they can choose to to do that with.
Yeah, and I think if you were to look at it at face value and say, if you could create a luxury watch brand right now from scratch, what would be the strongest possible market position? If you can't be F.P. Journe or Philippe Dufour, you'd say, I want to make a $5,000 to $10,000 steel sports watch, preferably something that's a diver or a pilot's watch.
Exactly.
And that's Breitling. If they can get over some of, I guess, the inertia of the last few years, they've got a really strong fundamental case.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I've been waiting for a long time. It's not going to be the watch that they come out with, but one of my favorite watches of all time are the old Prestiges.
Yeah.
And, I know that they tried to go that direction with the Transocean, but I really didn't hit it for me. But, crossing my fingers that we're going to get one of those bad boys back, vintage inspired.
Yeah, a real vintage Breitling is the last great untapped treasure trove of like affordably priced old watches today. Breitling should tap into that. Maybe that's where Georges Kern will take the brand.
I think so. That or a new Steelfish, like a well price point Steelfish. It was the one watch that they discontinued that I thought that they were out of their minds.
Yeah, the Steelfish, again, would probably play second fiddle to the Super Ocean Heritage because right now they're relaunching those with the Tudor movements.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think, a Steelfish with a Tudor movement would... Perfect watch.
Exactly.
Breitling, give us a call. Okay, another brand that was really big in the 90s and early 2000s.
Close to my heart, actually, but was Franck Muller. So I think that Franck Muller is, so dead in the U.S. that it could make a major comeback. And, I love the Casablanca case. The watches are gorgeous, particularly the ladies line. We brought one here. I'll let you give it a show.
My hand modeling.
But nobody does gold. Very few people can do gold and diamonds as well as Franck Muller. And the watches are a great price point. The styling is still great. It dates back to what, the 20s and the 30s.
Exactly. This was the original shape of the wristwatch before we settled on round.
And I just think that the watches are still beautiful, and people still have them. They just, it really just needs to get worn again, and for them to come back. And I think that, it's a watch that, or a brand, I should say, that with a little bit of the right marketing and a little bit of the right, redirection, could make a big surge back in the U.S.
I think the turning point for Franck Muller would really be if they took control of their U.S. distribution. I think that's been a challenge for them, that they've worked through third parties. I think maybe focusing a little bit more on owning their distribution, taking control of their image would probably be the key. Because right now, like you said, a brand that's starting from cardiac arrest only needs a pulse to improve.
And I think that there's so many out there that are in people's drawers that they're just not wearing, that it doesn't take much for the watch to to gain a little bit momentum for people to start putting it back on their wrists. And the moment that it's back on the wrists and other people see it is when it starts leading to more watches being sold in the stores.
Exactly. Like O.J. Watley, he was the founder of Watch You Want. He loved the Franck Muller brand. He used to love the way they looked, the way they wore. He wasn't so much into the movements. He was a Panerai guy from the ETA days. But he loved the brand, and he would always talk it up. And because he was the watch guy choosing that watch, he had disproportionate influence on all the people who asked him what they should buy and what they should wear. So like you said, Brian, I think getting watch guys to wear their Franck Muller again would be a key to the brand revival.
Yeah, 100%. Third and final brand is, and we may have talked about it or touched on it in previous episodes, would be Vacheron Constantin. I think that member of the Holy Trinity, lots of iconic designs, particularly here the overseas line, another Joe Argenta inspired piece, not even inspired from Joe Argenta. And they released the latest version of the overseas into a tough market.
Yeah.
And I think that it lost steam from the very beginning. And if you were to ask the other major players, AP, Patek, who do you believe if they come back online, who's the sleeping giant that could really come back and steal market share? If they could just figure it out, would be Vacheron. And their watches are gorgeous. You're a fan of the brand.
Qualitatively, the watches have never been better.
Mm-hmm. And lower, much lower production than either one of those two brands. And I think that with a little bit, again, it comes down to marketing, and it comes down to just hitting one watch, because one watch, can reinvigorate the customer, and it can also reinvigorate the brand.
Yeah, and I think two things are going to help them out. First, I think Louis Furla is going to be great for the brand. He's an old Richemont hand, really understands Far Eastern markets, really understands distribution, customer service, brand equity. So I think he's going to help them a lot on that front. The other thing is, I think the third generation overseas watches that came out last year are going to be like the runner who like trips at the beginning of a 3,600-meter race. If it were a 400, he'd be toast, but it's not a 400. It's a little bit of a marathon. I think that line is strong enough.
And they're doing well. I mean, again, particularly the blue dial variations, the chrono and the time only, they are not easy to get. I mean, if you go to most Vacheron retailers, which there aren't that many of, you know, they're not in stock, they're not readily available. And, you know, if you want one, you know, you can wait upwards of 3 months plus. So, you know, the watches are actually doing surprisingly well. I think that they just need to get back into, like, you know, the watch collector's frame of mind.
Yeah, and I think a rising tide will lift all boats, because we know steel AP Royal Oaks are red hot. Steel Patek Philippe sports watches, both Aquanaut and Nautilus, are red hot. And I think a lot of people, now that they're thinking about that kind of watch and thinking about spending that kind of money on that kind of watch, are going to go back and take another look at the third generation overseas, realize how much of an upgrade it is qualitatively over the second, and I think they're going to spend their money there.
And I think it's a great option that, you know, because there's not that many doors left in the United States, it's not something that a lot of people are pushed on. So they think, okay, Nautilus, they think Royal Oak, and you know, and that's what you see. And if only more people would say, hey, look at a Vacheron, because the watches are gorgeous. You're not going to see them on that many wrists, and it's still a beautiful watch with new in-house movements.
Yeah, and don't discount the dress lines. Don't discount Traditionnel. Don't discount Patrimony.
No. For many years, those were the watches that, you know, if you said, okay, a Calatrava is going to be a little bit too small, I want something that's a little bit larger, they were coming in early on at 40 millimeters. For that slightly larger dress watch for a guy that just didn't want something 35 to 38 millimeters.
Yeah, the Historique line is beautifully done and so sensitive to their heritage. Probably the best line of that kind, doing the tribute thing in the early 90s, back before that was cool.
Yeah,
Still the best in the business. You know, if you want a retrograde, if you want something with the famed JLC 920 ultra thin caliber that you get in a Royal Oak Jumbo, if you want a watch that's a little bit quirky and not afraid to be that way, but with impeccable manners, consider something like the 1972 Prestige Vacheron, a sleeping giant. I
mean, the 1921 driving watch, I think, you know, one of our watchers just commented that was, for me, like, just bonkers amazing.
I'm actually going to do a feature in an upcoming episode, maybe the next one, my favorite modern Vacherons. So
but you have to walk around with the watch like that, you know, all that. You know,
if we had
like you're driving a vintage Ferrari.
Yeah, well, if we had some of my favorite modern Vacherons in stock, I'd be tempted to buy, so don't get me started. Okay, so now here's a feature, and Sean's got some great graphics here, but these are Tim's favorite precious metal only watches. We talked about the watches that you would like to buy in precious metal given the option. But there's some watches that are only available that way. And so I decided to choose only from current references, otherwise the back catalog could go on forever. And these are my favorite precious metal only watches you can buy today. Okay, the Jaeger-LeCoultre Dual-Met UTT came out in 2013, a great take on the travel time watch, a jump hour with an independent hour and minute second time zone. First of all, JLC's first ever jump hour wristwatch. How cool is that? And short of the really like Ibris Mechanica high-end stuff and the Duo-Met Sphero Tourbillon, this is the most complicated standard Duo-Met caliber. But here's the thing, as much as I love it, especially the Metier Rare hammered dial, you either love the way this looks or it looks to you like a watch sucking on a marble.
I'm going to go with watch sucking on a marble.
Now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it.
And I kind of tipped my hand here, but the Vacheron Constantin 1972 Prestige, based on the vintage caliber 35202 from, yes, 1972, it's an asymmetrical trapezoid of a watch with an exquisite, ultra-thin, solid gold JLC base caliber inside. It's a little bit cumbersome to wear, but if ever beauty were worth the sacrifice, this watch is it. Exclusively available in white gold with rose gold hands and a beautiful herringbone dial. That JLC ultra thin movement inside seals the deal.
They made it in a ladies variation as well, I believe.
They made a lot, yeah. They've made a lot of variations on this watch through the year. There's even, on this exact case size, there is a boutique variation too. So you do have some choice, but not in steel. The Rolex Day-Date 118206, because to me, the Day-Date is the platinum ice blue dial. That is just so cool, so slick. Honestly, I get goosebumps looking at it because it gives me the chills. This is as good as the President gets. 36 millimeters, platinum, awesome weight in a compact watch, stealth wealth with a dial to die for. Brian, that is a Rolex I would wear every day in every way.
And what I love about it too is with as much variety that you have amongst the date trusts now, where pretty much it's as customizable as you want it to be. From dial colors, even the day date, dial colors that are available, sticks, Romans, diamonds. They still only do the ice blue on the platinum. And I think it's what sets the watch apart from all of the other watches in the collection, that whenever you see an ice blue dial, you know exactly what the person's wearing. That, or they took a dial and put it on something else. But,
yeah, all right. Well, that's a whole nother can of worms.
And what always kills me is when somebody wants a platinum day date with a different color dial other than the ice blue.
Yeah, it's wrong. It doesn't sit right.
Yeah, it's like, they shouldn't even do it.
It's like taking a contemporary Rolex off the bracelet and putting it on like a NATO. No, no. Yeah, a special watch.
I'm ready for that movement to die.
You see that? Yeah, that's true. That was done like 5 years ago, in my opinion. It's surviving on like fumes of Pabst Blue Ribbon. Hipsters, I got your number. So, watches on the rise. Now this one's all you, Bri. This one is all you. This is
feel free to chime in though at any time that you want.
Sure. High time collectibles whose moment has arrived.
So some of these are, I think, number one, like they're already here.
Okay.
But the movement is it's still coming along. So the first watch is the Rolex Daytona 116520. I'll let Tim show it off. Your standard 40 millimeter stainless steel Rolex produced from 2000 to 2015, post zenith movement, pre ceramic bezel, black and white dial. So what we're seeing even in the past 12 months is a all boats rising effect. And as the ceramic bezel Daytonas continue to bring well over retail in the $16,000 to $18,000 range, these prior variations with the steel bezels are going up. And last year we were seeing, complete examples going for anywhere from, call it 10 to 11,000, that they're now bringing well over 12,000 plus. So I think you're going to see these complete steel Daytonas bringing 13 to 14,000 again, simply because of the value of the other watches. And if someone was going to make a bet to say, hey, 10, 15 years from now, what are going to be the watches that I wish that I had a complete perfect set of, it's going to be these.
Absolutely true, and I also think we're going to start seeing segmentation and classification by dial variation. People don't realize that this watch, which seemed to be completely static for the better part of a decade and a half, actually had at least 5 and possibly 6 or more dial variations, some of which are exceptionally early and exceptionally uncommon. So definitely keep an eye on these. They're definitely stable. There is no more depreciation.
Yeah.
Prices are starting to firm up. So we're seeing the beginning of a collector's movement for the in-house caliber 6-digit Daytona. Now, I will chime in because I am a silly person. And my honorable mention, just cause, is the Daytona Beach series, especially the Chrysoprase white gold. Now, granted, I'm no longer in Florida, but you can take the boy out of Florida. You can't take the Florida and the Miami.
Those are awesome. I like they made one with a blue dial.
Yes, they did. That was Blue Mother of Pearl.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
White gold,
we don't
guys.
see too many of these pop up, actually.
It's a rare watch. I've only seen one in person once or twice.
Yeah.
But that would be the one I'd buy. Not the one to buy to collect, but what can I say? One of those went for stupid money at the Daytona auction in the fall of 2013, the anniversary auction, so you never know. But that is the most Tim Rolex Daytona.
Let's see here, moving on. Okay, so the next watch on the rise isn't so much a particular watch, but again, a grouping of watches, and it's all 39 millimeter Royal Oaks. Stainless steel, even gold. Since the transition from 39 to 41 millimeter several years back, the moment that the announcement was made, we saw an influx of people, regretting, oh, we want to get the 39, and it had slowed down for years, but the moment that they discontinue anything, it comes back. But
I want what I can't have.
Exactly. And what we're seeing now is the 15300s, the older chronographs, the 39mm dual times. These are all starting to bring more and more dollars in the secondary market, particularly those that are complete. And even not complete, they're starting to bring more dollars. But we're seeing, again, a firming up of the market, and people willing to pay more money for a pre-owned watch simply because they prefer that 39mm size better.
And I've heard this from a lot of people. I know Josh says specifically that the 41 doesn't wear 2 millimeters larger. It wears like a watch transformed, like it's taken more than a single step towards becoming a baby offshore. And I found that they do in fact wear like that. The 39 looks bigger, it wears bigger. Every Royal Oak, because of the integration of the bracelet, wears bigger than its size.
It really wears almost like a 40. And the 41, in my opinion, fits more like even like a 42 or 43. And the 41 was a watch for me personally. I don't have the largest wrist, but it's one of those watches I wanted it so bad, and I wanted it to look right on the wrist, and it just never did. And I just couldn't, and that's just my wrist. We sell a lot of them, so it looks great. But for me, I own the 39mm chrono with a navy blue dial, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, these are on the rise, and you have to remember, there's a global market for these. These are wearable on any wrist in any situation. If your wrist is smaller, if your wrist is bigger, if you need a formal watch, if you need a sporty watch, there is no market where this watch isn't relevant and in demand. So like Brian said, whether it's the dual time, the chronograph, especially the chronograph, this year being 20 years, the Royal Oak Chrono, people are really paying attention to that original reference. I want to say it was like 25860. That's the one to buy.
And you know that at some point in the near future, whether it's this coming year, next year, there's going to be a transition to a in-house movement, because they're currently using Frederick Bouquet movements.
Yeah,
and
have for a long time.
The price points are great, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with using a non-in-house movement, and people are perfectly happy to buy the chronos as is. But once they move into that in-house movement, I have to guess that the price point's going to go up a little bit. I don't know how much, but it's definitely going to go up. And again, you have an all boats rising situation. People will probably still prefer, if they want to, the 39mm, and the prices will rise even further.
I want to throw out a quick comment to Peter K. A lot of folks have been downloading our Govberg Watchbox app since we mentioned it on the show, and you did pinpoint the fact that the 116500 LN ceramic bezel Daytona was not in our pricing AI. We are fixing that. I spoke to my text this morning. That's going right into the app. As you give us the feedback in the comment threads, I'm actually getting it into our tech department to put it into the next rev of the app itself. So guys, keep the feedback coming.
Exactly, because the whole app was built for, honestly, like people that watch this show. And for us, when you're building it and you're doing it, sometimes it's hard to be outside of it. And so we really appreciate all the feedback that we get on it, and we're definitely putting that back into the app.
If you guys can break the app, I'm going to have like a contest. Break the app, find the bugs, find the holes.
Get some watch swag. We have swag to send out for that.
You have no idea. The Govbergs have been going to Basel for like 7 decades. There's some good stuff to be had. But continue, by all means. We got more watches on the rise.
So, final watch on the rise, I brought one here today, is the PAM 25 Submersible. So, chunky watch, hobnail dial, titanium case, extremely sturdy watch, built to just get the snot beat out of it. And I think that, with the resurgence of the submersible, they released a limited edition variation of 100 pieces only for the US, which is selling well above the retail price now. You have another, again, all boats rising. In fact, I feel like I'm killing that statement.
No, but you're absolutely right.
But it's bringing back the other submersible watches that you can get pre-owned for a great price.
We can invert it. It's all docks and beaches being submerged. There you go. So the PAM 25 was the original civilian true dive watch Luminor. It had the rotating bezel. It had the chunky profile. It's a mini bomba, if you remember the great and pioneering early submersibles. Now, there are a couple of generations of the PAM 25. The first one's A, B, and C series will have tritium dials, and you'll also note that those years have minimally calibrated bezels without the 15-minute quarter hashes. So there are a couple of different generations. Later on, you get a more refined watch with the quick release lugs and the roller bearing in the locking lever. So the question's really not so much, do you like the PAM 25? With the hobnail dial and the chunky aesthetic in the 44mm case, the titanium lightness on the wrist, everyone loves it, but there are some variations along the way. The more collectible would be that early ABC series watch. The more wearable watch would be one built towards the end of the line. The end of the line was 2013. A more refined watch. You have the choice. There's good selection. What there isn't is any more depreciation. Like Brian said, prices are firming up because of, the 731, the online exclusive, because of the 682, the small submersible, and the 684.
And I think at a certain point, the value is just there. Once they lower the retail values to the point where you would say, like, wow, like that's one heck of a watch for the price. They're only going to depreciate so much. And what tends to happen is when you see them available for sale, and if we're looking to buy the watch for less than it's selling for, what happens is it's really just the profit that somebody's looking to make to resell the watch. So as far as the floor goes, I think that it's there, and you're going to see watches like this really firming up as as they move back out into the market.
Yeah, if you've experienced the PAM 24 and you liked that, you got to try the PAM 25 because it's everything you loved about the 24 in a more wearable and charming dial case combination.
Yeah. And I don't know if I said it, but all of these are available on our website.
Yeah, if it's here, figure it's available. Now, what's not available? Let's do some wrist shots. Here are two you can't have.
Okay, so this was probably my most recent acquisition. It is a favorite of mine. I'd been hunting it for a long time. It is a 38mm red FP Journe Resonance. Red meaning red gold case, red dial. I currently have it set to both local Philadelphia time and the local time in Switzerland. So a little bit about the Resonance. The Resonance was one of the first two lines of watches that Francois Paul made. It was the Tourbillon and it was the Resonance. This is actually I'll pop it off here.
Yeah, definitely.
A Resonance 2, meaning it was produced after the original brass movements, but before the current variation of the watch. So you have two. It's basically two movements fused together.
Exactly.
That help self-regulate one another and make themselves more accurate.
FP Journe, actually a great collector of both the clocks and the writings of Untitled Chapter. He helped to take what was originally a clock and pocket watch concept and transpose it into a wristwatch format. And that was really the claim to fame with this watch. It proposed a solution to chronometry that no one had really worked out in a wristwatch format.
A couple of others have worked it out since, but I think that nobody has gained call it the command of the market for this kind of watch more so than him.
And I would also say that from an investment perspective, these pre-2010 Resonance watches really have nothing to fear from the Arm & Strom mirrored force. As much as I love it, this watch as a work of art and as an investment,
it's amazing.
It's in a class by itself.
The only way I'm ever getting rid of this one is if I happen to find the brass movement variation, which I think we might have coming in the near future. So that's the only way this one's leaving.
See what a good salesman is? He just sold himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then of course I saw Brian was wearing the Resonance, so I swapped out the Amvox 2 for a watch that I love to wear for no good reason, especially because half the time it's not even telling time. This is my Reverso Tourbillon. It's the Platinum Reverso number 2 from 2003. Platinum case, white gold movement, contrast to the red gold of the Journe. Tourbillon, coaxial power reserve on the dial side, ruthenium dial. It's actually ruthenium coated 18 karat white gold with hand painted floral numerals. For me, the artistic density of this watch is off the chart. I just love it to pieces. And because it's a Reverso, it pretty much comes to pieces too.
I feel like the Reverso is like the one watch that I don't have yet in my collection. I shouldn't say there's lots of watches I don't have in my collection, but the Reverso being one of them that I really want to fill badly. I just haven't found exactly the right one yet. I was thinking like the tribute to 1931 on the, what's the polo got?
The Fagliano strap.
Yeah.
I think for you, one of the dual models is going to be ideal because I know you hate a GMT hand. But a second dial, that's kosher. Okay, now we're not quite done because Brian and I picked some of our surprise hits of 2017. Watches that came out and just did a whole lot better than we guessed and anticipated. Brian,
Or came out amongst a grouping of other watches that you knew were going to do really well, and then you knew that those were going to do well, but then sleepers came out and skyrocketed.
Yeah,
so,
Brian's got two interesting picks, some sleeper success stories of 2017.
So my first is the Panerai Submersible 684, which is a 42 millimeter submersible in rose gold with a ceramic bezel. So, I mean, built to basically be a head-to-head competition with the Rolex ceramic bezel red gold Yacht Master on the Oyster Flex. And you know, I think it's priced a little bit higher than the Yacht Master.
Yeah.
But when you feel that case, it's damn. Like there is more. There is a lot of gold there.
I can vouch for that, and it's worth every penny of the 26,700 once you felt it in the hand.
And I think that you know, it's one of those watches that had it been 44 millimeter, it would have just been too big and too much. And at 42 millimeter, it's extremely wearable. It's rich looking, and you know, you're not going to see that. You're not going to see that many on too many wrists. And you know, you know, it's very tight right now. The watch is actually not available in retailers yet. It's only purchasable through the boutiques, but it will be making its way out to retailers very soon.
Think about that, constrained supply and high demand for a precious metal Panerai. 10 years ago, that would have been unheard of. This one is just a home run in terms of size, in terms of heft. I would also say the ceramic bezel insert and the way it contrasts with the rose
It's like
gold.
a matte black.
Yeah, it's a win.
And I like
durable.
too that it's a 42 that fits like a 42. If that you know, it's like it's not a 42 that fits like a 44. Like it's a 42 that actually fits the way that it should. So moving on, the next one I would say is probably close to your heart is the JLC Reverso Tribute Moon, which came out this past year at Baselworld. Sorry, not Baselworld, SIHH. Sorry.
Okay. I didn't jump, I didn't pounce.
And almost. It came out alongside the new Master Control with the
sector dials.
Sector dials.
I mean, those were the rock stars, and then this sort of rose up quietly behind the hype that surrounded those.
Exactly, and it was not so much surprising because reversos always do well, but they come out with different reversos every year, and it was surprising to see how many calls we got for for this watch so early on, and I think that's one of the main reasons was that they just did a beautiful job on the moon phase, and it just pops right off that dial, and. You know, I think that it was a lot of people gravitated towards the watch for that reason. You had the navy indices, the navy croc strap, and it's just like it's a great price point too.
Yeah, I mean $12,000 and change. You're talking just under $13,000. But this is a watch that has a big steel case, looks great on the wrist. It's the first Reverso family, along with last year's debuts, to have a cambered case back. So while the watch is still straight as a board, the back of it is arced. So they finally found a way to make a big Reverso fit a human-sized wrist.
Exactly.
It also has a gorgeous blue reverse dial. So not only do you get the date and the moon phase, you also get a second time zone, so it's a Reverso duo with a hidden lever adjuster on, and the hidden lever adjuster is only visible when you pop the watch out of its carriage.
So I mean, again, this is right up that JLC's alley in terms of beautiful watch, stainless steel case, and extraordinary value.
And I know George Mayer, who's been on the show, he was there buying some of our allotments of JLC at SIHH this year, and he was looking at the different models. Everyone liked the sectors. When this Reverso came up, he said, wow, that's really good. And this is a guy who is kind of sparse with his compliments.
So those were my two, and I think that you have one addition also, which I don't really think is a surprise hit. But tell me why you think.
Okay, here's why I think. It's just like with the Deep Sea, the Rolex Deep Sea Sea-Dweller, which was a watch that just never got off the blocks. It killed the old 40 Sea-Dweller that everyone loved. It was too big. The bracelet wasn't the right width for the case. Blah blah blah. But then the Deep Blue came out, the James Cameron Special Edition in 2014, and all of a sudden, it became a red-hot variant of a watch that no one wanted, which was puzzling to me. And Rolex did it again this year with the Sky-Dweller. Now, the 326-934, mostly stainless steel, it's got a ceremonial white gold bezel to it, but at $14,400, it's less than half the price of the original full precious metal Sky-Dweller. The Sky-Dweller originally was just not a watch people loved. Too bulky, too expensive, a GMT ring that, depending on who you spoke to, either looked like a horse collar or a toilet seat or a donut. And frankly, I never saw any kind of momentum behind that model. So I didn't think when a stainless steel version popped up, people would be like, yes, that's what I want. I've got to have it. Like, I didn't know the watch had the it factor. Like,
and yeah, I mean, I think that for a lot of people that were getting the gold variants of the watch, it wasn't so much that they wanted an annual calendar. I think it was that they just wanted a bigger gold Rolex. And they wanted, you know, and maybe they thought for whatever reason that the Day-Date 2 was a little bit too small or too thin, and they wanted something a little bit larger. And this was that in-between watch in between this and maybe a Yachtmaster too.
Sure.
That could be worn somewhat easily. And so a lot of people gravitated towards that in the yellow and rose variants. I mean, again, the white gold black dial happens to be gorgeous in white gold as well. But then, you know, once they released the stainless steel at $14,400, I mean, you're like, holy crap, $14,400 for a steel Rolex annual calendar. I mean, the watch could have been priced $3,000, $4,000 more, and they would have sold the same amount.
Yeah, it's a steel Rolex with an annual calendar, a second time zone, a 3-day power reserve, still swimmable 100 meters. It might be that this brings in the movement fans, the people who buy watches for the movements, who were not traditionally Rolex customers. It might be that you cut the price in half. All of a sudden, those guys who are looking at JLC and Zenith and UN are suddenly looking at Rolex. I don't know. They found some sort of alchemical solution here. It's witchcraft, it's sorcery, but you know what? Rolex does it so regularly.
And I think that it leads it paves the path for them to come out with some of their, you know, some of the older watches that they used to do with the calendar functions. That if they wanted to bring one of those back now, that, you know, they've paved the way with the movements and people that are, you know, that are buying, you know, complicated Rolexes.
That's a fact, especially with the Cellini introducing Rolex's first moon phase since the 50s this year. So guys, I want to thank you for joining us tonight and say,
Yeah, thank you.
Remember, the Govberg Watchbox app is the best way to get our videos. It's the best way to get my articles, and it's the best way to keep track of your watch collection and what it's worth in real time. I know guys who have the app who log onto it every single day to see how their collections changed overnight as watches are bought and sold in Hong Kong and Singapore. So upgrades are coming. Currency converters. Obviously, we're getting the steel ceramic Daytona in there. That's confirmed. Augmented reality is coming. More on that soon. Exclusive videos, the articles, and of course, the best way to interact with your collection and what it's worth in real time. Check out the Govberg Watchbox app on our website, govbergwatches.com. Till then, this is Watch You Want. I'm Tim. He's Brian. They're the three amigos plus one. She's Sue. I've got a crowd. And thanks for logging on.